only live once, exile. Make your choice.
Hi everyone, today I'm bringing you a Stormbrand League starter build for 3.14 Ultimatum League. Stormbrand remains my favorite skill in all of Path of Exile, and with the patch notes now out, it looks like this is going to continue being the case going forward. That said, a lot has changed since I released my guide, and we're going to jump right into talking about that. First off, we got nerfed. Corrupted Soul got a minor nerf, Fractured Fossils will no longer be printing power charge rings, Exploding Chest got nerfed to the point that we're probably going to run Impulsor League, and finally Harvest many of its most powerful crafts outright removed from the game. However, every other top build got nerfed as well, and in most cases, those builds got hit with much harder nerfs, so relative to other skills, Stormbrand will now be even stronger in my opinion. Furthermore, with the nerfs effectively killing the Delirium map meta, we're no longer going to actually need to be as powerful as we once were anyway to participate in the highest level of endgame farming. This build is still going to blast through the Feared, Maven, Cirrus, and Juiced maps, so all in all, Stormbrand is looking to be positioned very well heading into the next patch. Now some of you are probably wondering why I'm making this video at all, as in the past I used to advise against league starting Stormbrand. Well, after I was done farming my Mirror's Last League, I spent about an entire month making new assassin characters in SSF and Trade League to practice various league start strategies and found a much more effective way of scaling our Lightning Slinger leveling build into maps, and that's what I'm going to share with you all now. So, for those of you who don't know, League starting Stormbrand comes down to starting as a Lightning Slinger, and then eventually transitioning to Stormbrand only once you have obtained certain unique items. Stormbrand is a pretty terrible skill without investment, and if you try to just play it on its own, you can have a pretty bad time. Alongside this video, I'm also releasing a fully commentated leveling run from Act 1 to Piety that details explicitly what choices you need to make and what strategies you need to use to set up a Lightning Slinger as early as possible. I highly recommend checking this out, and the link will be in the description below. However, if you don't want to, all the information is also available on my forum guide and in the notes section of the leveling POB itself. Playing as a Lightning Slinger in early maps comes down to simply running Arc, Wave of Conviction, and Stormbrand in Spellslinger links, whilst using Frenzy with Blind to trigger our spells, whilst blinding enemies and generating Frenzy charges for us. I'll show you what this looks like now before we move on to the Stormbrand transition. Okay, so here we have my character as it would appear coming out of maps pretty much, or at least shortly after coming out of maps. I've self-crafted some wands, so in this one we simply alked it and then applied a benchcraft. For this one I applied an essence to get the lightning damage to spells and then applied another benchcraft. We have a very terrible amulet here. It's got fizz, damage, leeched his life. The reason for this is because we're using Frenzy. It's not going to provide a significant amount of life regen, but it's something. And we have the agility node anointed on our tree. That's this one. The reason for that is because of our helm setup. So Gold Rim is something I would really recommend buying as soon as you get out of maps. It's going to make capping your resist a lot easier going forward, and you're only giving up a little bit of life in this slot. But it also lets you get 4 green sockets very easily, and the reason we want that is so we can run Frenzy with Blind, GMP, and Chain. So the benefit of doing that is that when you're casting Frenzy, you're going to be applying a Blind, and that gives you 50% evasion against attacks, which is a lot of survivability for a character that sits at about 3.1k, going into white maps. Not much else to say about this really. We drop Ball Lightning from our setup, and the reason for that is because Ball Lightning is our weakest gem, but by doing so we can make up for the damage with Frenzy. We also have more mana to play with, so we can attach additional support gems to the rest of our links, and overall you're only giving up a tiny bit of damage, but you're getting the blind in to the setup, which is probably a trade that's like almost always going to be worth it. In our other links, we have Brand Recall and Assassin's Mark. We're going to run Assassin's Mark instead of Conductivity. After the storyline, Assassin's Mark tends to require a bit of crit scaling to pull ahead of Conductivity, but Conductivity gets significantly reduced against endgame bosses, so I'm just going to get out of the habit of using that at all. In this link, we're running Flame Dash with Faster Casting and Arcane Surge. Not much to say there. We use Arcane Surge both for the mana regen and for the damage buff it gives. In this link, I recommend running either Boots or Gloves that are hybrid armor and ES, so that you can access 3 or 4 red sockets more easily. We're going to run Immortal Core with cast when damage taken, increased duration support, and I'm just going to slap Portal in there in case we die. Portal is a really good thing to run on squishier builds early in a league. It's going to save you a lot of time doing runbacks, which, is really helpful. Now, as for our actual spell slinger links, so in this one we're running Spellslinger with Wave of Conviction, Power Charge on Crit, and Arc. I've de-leveled Arc to 18 so that it doesn't seem as though I'm inflating my damage, because Arc isn't going to be level 19 or 20 when you get to maps. In this setup, we're running Stormbrand, Spellslinger, Swiftbrand, and Power Charge on Crit. Now, the reason we use Swiftbrand and Power Charge on Crit supports in the Spellslinger setups is because they have mana multipliers of 110%. Now, mana multipliers are going to cause your reservation for Spellslinger skills to like get way out of control, but these are the only two gems in the game which really add significant amounts of damage whilst also having very low mana multipliers, so they're 100% worth using. I haven't actually checked whether dropping Ball Lightning and switching to this setup is more or less damage. It feels pretty much about the same though, being able to fit in these extra support gems and having the Frenzy charges from Frenzy. So I'm just going to slap in a map here. I've applied Sextants to the map, and it's a tier 6 tropical island, so we're just going to see how that goes pretty much. Okay, so we're going to just clear the map and see how we go here. It's important to consider that, given that we're not the tankiest of builds, you've got to keep moving and make sure that you don't stop and actually tank hits. This build is not really in a hardcore viable state at the moment, and so if you take more than a few hits at a time, you're probably going to die. Immortal Call is going to help quite a bit, as will Blind, but you know, you're not. I wouldn't say you're sufficiently tanky, and especially not tanky enough to like start doing all the league mechanics and taking on beyond bosses and that sort of thing. This is just a setup that allows us to scale into maps, and as you can see, I'm using like rares that wouldn't even sell for 1C. They are solo self-found rares that I picked up very early in maps, and in some cases still in the campaign. So it's just a setup that you can run to get you a bit of currency to start out with. You know, it's absolute bare bones, and these life totals are far less than what you would even aim to run. You know, like the Amulet having 19 life, for example, that leaves a lot of room for improvement. You should aim to have at least 3.5, 3.6k, although you can get it higher if you really work towards it. As you can see, we're having no trouble clearing through a tier 6 map that has Sextants on it. Gonna keep clearing, level up my gems. Even ram monsters die rather fast, as you can see. Not really having to stop for them. Yeah, this build is definitely above average for a starter, I would say. I don't know if it's exactly in the realm of, say, Toxic Rain, as I don't have a lot of experience playing a min-maxed Toxic Rain League starter setup, but it's definitely above, you know, it's definitely well above average for what you would expect from a League starter. I'm just going to keep clearing along now. Apply Assassin's Mark to the map boss. We'll keep flame dashing away, and as you can see, the map boss just rolled over, no problems. And yeah, that was a pretty quick clear. 20 monsters remain, so it's not like we were skipping mobs or anything like that. And yeah, this is pretty much what you should expect from the build. It continues to scale up as you get additional gem levels and better weapons. You know, these are self-made weapons that anyone can make. It requires absolutely nothing. It's just a matter of getting one good mod and crafting another good mod onto it, and you know, the one good mod that you get, in this case lightning damage to spells, can come from an essence. So there's really not really any RNG involved in this. This is literally just the essence mod plus a spell damage craft onto a wand. It's something you can do the moment you hit maps, or even before you hit maps. Now, when you hit maps, you're going to use the setup I just showed you for a little while to generate currency, so that we can do our full transition to a Mind Over Matter Stormbrand setup. We're going to save for an Impulsor, an Ephemeral Bond Amulet, an Agnorod West Staff, 2 Essence Worm Rings, a Medium Brand Cluster with the Holy Conquest notable, and preferably you're going to be at least about level 80 at this time. It is also helpful to obtain a Militant Faith with the Dominus Keystone and a small cluster jewel with the Enduring Composure notable. Once these items have been obtained, we can fully transition into the next POB, and that will take us the rest of the way to tier 16 maps. I'm now going to show you what that looks like. So here we have the Mind Over Matter variant of the character. I'm running it at a very bare bones level as well. I don't want to really inflate anything or show it off to be something that it's not. We're using a 5-link Stormbrand setup in the Agnorod West rather than the 6-link. We're only using 4 links out of the impulses rather than all 6. We're using the Immortal Call setup that I showed before, Wave of Conviction with Assassin's Mark, and here we have Val Righteous Fire with increased duration support and Val Haste. For buffs, we're also running Wrath and Flesh and Stone in our Essence Worms. Now, all the other items are pretty much just like trash rares, pretty much. As you can see, Tech Slime enchant on the helm. We don't really care much for it. We're mostly picking up these items for Resistance and Life. Now, we're running the Ephemeral Bond Amulet, which is something that I really recommend getting the moment that it hits the market at a decently cheap price. It is one of the most crazy, overpowered items for how common it is. It gives you it gives you between 30 to 40 crit multi, as you can see, 15 to 25 all res. You get an absolute ton of lightning damage per power charge, and you even get mana regen. And it's all at the cost of having lower power charge duration, but because you run power charge on crit as a support, and you also get it passively from your Ascendancy, this isn't really a problem at all. It's really cheap, and I'm also running the Infuse Anoint here. However, that's really expensive to run at the start of the league, so I've paid manually to it anyway, so that it doesn't feel like we're basically not running an Anoint in this setup. We are running a Militant Faith that is converting Pain Attunement to Inner Conviction so that we have additional spell damage from our power charges. You know, that's at 7 power charges, that's giving you 21% more damage, which is kind of like having half of an extra gem. We're running Eldritch Battery here, Mind Over Matter, and then just like a standard tree where you're picking up like brand stuff, power charge stuff, life, mana. We take these staff nodes here. This staff node here is really good to anoint. We've taken endurance charges, and I'll explain why right now. So the brand jewel that you want to take has to have a Holy Conquest notable on it. This isn't really important. In fact, I would recommend not taking it. It's kind of a waste of a point. The Holy Conquest notable allows your brands to move around. That's going to shock more things, which is important for your impulses. Now, impulses here, the explosions cannot shock. So, unlike normal exploding chest, you're not going to have self-proliferating explosions. This is why Holy Conquest is really good. It just spreads around the shock in a pack, makes your explosions a bit more even. It's just really good in general. It also means that your brands aren't going to get stuck on a high health rare, that you flame dash into a pack, it gets stuck on a high health rare, and then the entire pack lives, you get hit and you die. And then after that, we're going to use a small cost sigil with armor on it, and we're going to take the Enduring Composure node. Now, this is crazy OP, if you think about it. You get 4 endurance charges every time you get hit, which is one of the easiest ways to sustain endurance charges in the game. It's extremely low investment. It's giving you 16% physical damage reduction, you know, pretty much at all times, you know, as long as you're getting hit recently. Because every time it adds an endurance charge, it then refreshes the duration. And then that synergizes very well with your Immortal Call here, because you're getting additional physical damage reduction from the Immortal Call and additional duration for each endurance charge it removes. It's just crazy amounts of survivability, really. Anyway, I'm going to chuck in a tier 16 Atoll. I've applied Sextants to this map as well, and we're just going to see how we go with this one. Okay, we have porcupines on this map, which is really quite a shame. I'm gonna pop the essence here. Now remember, this is all on a 5-link. By the time you get to tier 16 maps, you should have a 6-link. You're looking to 6-link your Ragnarod rather than your impulses. They tend to be quite a bit cheaper than getting the 6-link impulses. And as you can see, tier 16 porcupines, we can actually pop them and kind of live. You know, which means this build has a decent amount of tankiness. I think this run kind of shows it. We'll just do the boss while we're here. Now this is on Awaken and 9 levels of health. So in an actual league start, this is going to have quite a bit less health. It doesn't die too slowly. As you can see. Now we're going to go clear the rest of the map. This is really still in budget territory. You're looking at having spent, 5x at absolute most at this point. We're still using completely unoptimized res. We, don't have void batteries. We don't have a 6-link. We don't have all of our gems fully leveled up or optimized. I just wanted to show basically what this build is capable of, without having invested in it. Everyone knows that Stormbrand, after you've invested, is like one of the best skills in the entire game. But I needed to at least show that it was capable of getting to that point without being a total struggle. And as you can see, we're clearing a tier 16 at a pretty decent pace. It's got porcupines as well, so it's quite a bit more dangerous than a normal map. And we're not having too many problems. I have to pop our flasks occasionally, but that's pretty normal. Yep, and as you can see, we've pretty much cleared the entire map. So, 16 monsters remaining. Once you've generated further currency using the Mind Over Matter setup, you're going to start working towards the Corrupted Soul variant of the build. Corrupted Soul is being nerfed slightly, but it's not really a problem. I've already tested the build at lower levels of EHP and hardly noticed a difference. To do this transition, we want to obtain 4 min-max to medium brand cluster jewels, with 3 of them having the brand loyalty and grand design combo. We want life and ES leech from our large cluster jewel setups. Now if you look at my guide, I have a detailed way to craft both nodes onto the same jewel. Additionally, we also want a replica soul tether belt, vermilion rings ideally, and an enchanted Stormbrand helm with the 12% lightning penetration enchant. You also want to be about at least level 90. The basis of this transition is that we are dropping our mana investment from the Mind Over Matter setup and shifting it into cluster jewels, whilst instead relying on higher base life totals and Corrupted Soul to give us the EHP we were getting from Mind Over Matter. This version of the build gets to run about 3 times as much damage and has much higher brand attachment range and duration, whilst only giving up a very small percentage of our survivability. The Corrupted Soul variant of the build has more than enough damage to kill Cirrus 8, and with some min-maxing, it should be able to unlock at least 6 to 8 of your Uncharted Realm passives, although you will eventually need to move on to the higher investment versions of this build to unlock them all. All this information is listed along with the POBs in my forum guide. I've provided additional POBs to give you guidance for further optimizing your character from this point, such as how to transition to the Void Barrier setup later in the league, and eventually how to have what is effectively a best-in-slot setup on your character that costs about 300x and requires a headhunter. Now before I wrap things up, just a few quick words regarding the 3.14 meta. So given the exploited chest nerfs, I'm heavily anticipating a surge in popularity of builds that use impulses. Historically, when impulses has been a meta item such as the VDDD meta, this item was multiple X in the first week of the league, and I expect the same from 3.14. Lightning Slinger should get you by until you can afford it, but given that Lightning Slinger is on the squishier side, don't expect to be consistently getting to the final wave of ultimatums until you transition to Stormbrand fully. If early currency generation is a massive problem for you, it may honestly be worth looking into a lower budget league starter such as Vortex Occultist or Freezing Pulse Totem Hierophant, which I expect both to be S tier starters this time around. Finally, to avoid having a huge backlog of DMs on Discord like I did last league, I'm going to be streaming this league, and I'm going to provide the link for that in the description below. If you want to contact me for any help regarding Stormbrand or anything at all, just drop in at any time and hit me up with whatever questions you have, and I'll answer you in real time. You can otherwise contact me over Discord, but since I'm going to be grinding away at PoE 18 hours a day, I probably won't be looking at my Discord very often throughout the first month of the league. Anyway, I hope this has been helpful, and I wish you all the best of luck with your league start.